My name is Rose Willows, and this is not the life I imagined for myself. For 7 years, I dedicated every ounce of my strength to raising my grandson, rocking him to sleep, pacing through fevers, protecting him from every nightmare. It wasn't for glory or recognition, just love. But the love I gave wasn't enough. One day, my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We need our own space now." And just like that, everything I had poured into their lives was cast aside. There was no ceremony, no heartfelt thank you, just a swift eviction from their lives, leaving my pride battered and my heart cracked. I sold my apartment in the city, packed what little dignity I had left, and retreated to the countryside. A fresh start, I thought. A quiet life, I hoped. But peace was fleeting. The call came on a sweltering afternoon. My son's voice poured through the receiver like syrup smooth but sticky with expectation. "Mom, Tyler really misses you. Could you come for the summer? And oh, while you're here, his camp fees are $5,000. You can cover that, right?" $5,000. My sacrifices were no longer enough. They wanted my wallet too. Anger bubbled deep within, stewing with the bitterness of their entitlement. Something was about to change. No more blind obedience, no more unspoken resentment. This story was getting a rewrite. That night, at dinner, tension crackled in the air. Jenny, my self-assured daughter-in-law, jabbed at her green beans like they had personally offended her. "Kylie, did you rinse these properly? Tyler's stomach is sensitive. You know he can't handle dirty food." Her words, wrapped in feigned concern, pierced like needles. My hands, trembling from years of quiet submission, tightened around my bowl. Jenny turned to Tyler, her voice syrupy sweet. "Sweetheart, is Grandma's cooking better, or do you prefer when Mommy takes you out?" And there it was, the game of sides, the battle for loyalty. Tyler glanced at her, then at me, and muttered, "Grandma's food is good too." But his eyes betrayed hesitation, and a chill ran through me. Jenny's gaze darted to my son Mison and softened just enough to shield herself. "Kylie, maybe you could turn the television down at night. We have work early, and Tyler has school." I opened my mouth to defend myself, to reclaim a shred of dignity. But Jason Mison kept his head down, chewing in complicit silence. A fury erupted within me, raw and feral. For 7 years I had poured every ounce of myself into raising their child, and this was my reward? Complaints about vegetables and volume levels? My voice quivered with rage as I confronted Jenny, but Jason, ever the peacemaker, dismissed me with a casual, "Mom, come on. Jenny didn't mean it like that." That polite smile of hers sharp as a dagger cut through me. "It's not that we don't appreciate you." Call to action. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. I never thought I'd find myself here piecing together shards of the life I once knew, while uncovering the unsettling truths that unraveled everything. For years, I endured indignities for the sake of my family, quietly sacrificing my needs, my dreams, and my dignity. I bit my tongue when I was insulted, clung to hope when I was cast aside, and forgave far more than I should have. But even I have limits. What finally broke me? It wasn't the sneers or the dismissive remarks. It was betrayal. This story is about what happened when the people closest to me exploited my love, tested my patience, and underestimated my resilience. It's not just a story of pain, but of reckoning. Why am I sharing this now? Because the truth deserves to be heard, and justice, however imperfect, deserves to be served. People have told me, it's better to let things go. But this isn't about revenge or lingering resentment. It's about reclaiming my voice, owning my experiences, and making sense of the chaos that altered my life forever. If my story resonates with you, perhaps it's because we all reach a point where silence is no longer an option, where speaking up is the only way forward. This is my story, and it starts with the moment my son introduced me to his neighbor as the maid. All of that meant nothing on the day my daughter-in-law, Jenny, sat across from me at the dinner table, leveled her gaze, and said in the calmest voice, "We need our own space now." There was no argument, no discussion, just a quiet declaration that my time in their lives was over. My son Jason, who had once clung to me as a child in fear of the dark, sat beside her in complicit silence. His eyes darted to the side, unable to meet mine. Jenny's smile was faint but firm, the kind of expression you wear when delivering bad news you're secretly pleased about. The message was clear. I was no longer welcome. I moved out the next morning. The process was mechanical, almost surreal. I packed my belongings, years of memories reduced to a few suitcases. In the living room, I paused to look at the photos on the wall. Tyler's award ribbons, his school drawings, all of it pinned up by my hands. They didn't even notice as I took one last look before stepping out the door. Jason escorted me downstairs to the lobby, stuffing a few $100 bills into my hand like he was tipping a waitress. "Just in case," he mumbled. I stared at the money, my heart a storm of emotion shirt, anger, disbelief. I handed the bills back to him without a word and walked away. I found myself in the countryside, living with my sister Nancy. For a while, I tried to tell myself it was for the best. Quiet mornings, fresh air, it was supposed to be a peaceful retreat. But peace is hard to find when your heart is shattered. I missed Tyler terribly. I missed his laughter, his hugs, his small hand in mine. Every time the phone rang, I hoped it was Jason calling to apologize, to tell me they needed me. But the call I eventually received was far from what I had hoped for. It was Jason, and his voice was as smooth as ever. "Mom, Tyler really misses you. Any chance you could come help us out for the summer?" My heart leaped at the thought of seeing my grandson again, but Jason wasn't finished. "Oh, and while you're here, could you cover his summer camp fees? It's about $5,000. The words hit me like a slap. So that's what I was to them: free childcare and an ATM. My chest tightened with anger, but I agreed to come. I needed to see Tyler, even if it meant swallowing my pride. When I arrived, things seemed different. The house felt colder, the atmosphere heavier. At dinner, Jenny made a show of critiquing everything I did. "Kylie, did you rinse these vegetables properly? Tyler's stomach is sensitive, you know." She didn't raise her voice, but her words were sharp, slicing through my patience. I clenched my fists under the table, biting back the retort bubbling in my throat. Jason sat there, saying nothing, as if he didn't notice the tension. Later that evening, Tyler approached me hesitantly. "Mom says I need to learn to play by myself now," he said, his little face unsure. My heart sank. Jenny had managed to turn even my sweet grandson against me. I wanted to tell him it wasn't true, that I would always be there for him, but the words caught in my throat. Children don't lie, they repeat what they're taught. The breaking point came when Jason and Jenny sat me down for another conversation. This time, they didn't bother sugarcoating it. "Mom," Jason began, his tone rehearsed, "we've been thinking. It's really time for you to rest. We just want what's best for you. Maybe you could move into a smaller place nearby," Jenny chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We just want you to be comfortable, Kylie." Comfortable, rest, peace, all euphemisms for the same thing. They didn't want me around. That night, as I lay awake in the cramped guest room, something inside me shifted. The warmth I had carried for so long hardened into something cold and unyielding. I realized I was no longer a part of their family. I was a burden, an inconvenience they wanted to discard. The next morning, I packed my bags again. But this time, I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving to reclaim my dignity. As I stepped out of their house for the last time, I made a silent vow. They had underestimated me, and they would regret it. The phone call that changed everything came late at night. My hands shook as I picked it up, not sure what I'd hear on the other end. Nancy's voice was warm and solid, a lifeline I desperately needed. "Kylie, what kind of person treats someone like that?" Her anger was unmistakable, her voice sharp but steady. "Don't you cry another minute. You hear me? Pack your things. Come stay with me. We'll figure this out together." Those words lit a spark deep within me, cutting through the suffocating fog that had clouded my heart for so long. Nancy's conviction, her unwavering belief in me, was the first beacon of hope I'd felt in years. She didn't see me as a burden or a problem to be solved. She saw me as her sister, someone worth fighting for. When the call ended, I sat in the silence of my dimly lit apartment. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a tomba shrine to a life that had crumbled under the weight of betrayal and neglect. Jason and Jenny had reduced me to a shadow of myself, and for the first time, I realized I didn't want to stay trapped in their orbit. That place, that apartment, wasn't just a physical anchor, it was a chain dragging me down. The next morning, I made the call. The real estate agent sounded enthusiastic as I described the apartment's location, a prime spot, just steps from the subway. She assured me the market was strong, that we'd find a buyer quickly. My hands trembled as I signed the paperwork to list the property. But beneath the nerves, a calm resolve began to build. This wasn't for them. It wasn't for Jason or Jenny or Tyler. It was for me, for my future. Within weeks, the sale was finalized. The funds hit my account, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to secure my independence, my dignity, and my chance to start over. I didn't tell Jason or Jenny. They had no idea their safety net was gone, that the apartment now belonged to someone else, and that the money was resting quietly in my name. I packed carefully, each item deliberate. Part of the funds went into a fixed deposit me untouchable safety net. The rest remained liquid, ready to support whatever the next chapter would bring. Then, with nothing left to hold me back, I bought a one-way bus ticket to Maine. The bus ride felt surreal, a blur of steel and neon fading into rolling green hills. The city skyline, once a daily backdrop, became a distant memory. The crowds at the subway entrance, the glass towers, the blinking storefronts, all of it melted into the past. I didn't know what waited for me in Maine, but I knew one thing. I was never going back to that house. It felt like escaping a cage, like uncorking a bottle sealed for too long. Relief, fear, and peace mingled in my chest. Hours later, the road curved into gentle hills, dotted with pine trees. The air smelled clean and alive, free of the city's smog. As the bus pulled into the tiny transit station, I saw her, Nancy, my sister. She was waiting by the platform, hands stuffed into her coat pockets, eyes scanning the windows. She looked older than I remembered, but her smile was unchanged bright, wide, unwavering. "Kylie!" Her voice rang out as she moved toward me, her arms outstretched. The moment she hugged me, I broke. 7 years of exhaustion, humiliation, and resentment spilled out in sobs. Every sleepless night, every moment of loneliness, every heartbreak, they poured out of me like a flood. Nancy held me tightly, rubbing my back as I cried. "You're here now. That's all that matters," she whispered, her voice steady and sure. "It's over. You've got me. You're not alone anymore." Nancy's home was everything. The city wasn't bright, warm, and peaceful. It was a cozy 2-story cabin on the edge of the woods, surrounded by rows of vegetables and roaming chickens. The air smelled of fresh grass and soil, the kind of clean that makes you breathe deeper. The wind chime above the porch tinkled softly, a gentle melody that welcomed me into this new chapter. Life in the countryside was slow and honest. I woke to the sound of birds chirping, not blaring alarms. The mornings began with sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of earth carried on the breeze. Nancy and I worked together in the garden, pulling weeds and watering rows of vegetables. As the green sprouts grew taller, I felt something inside me take root, a quiet but powerful sense of renewal. Nancy taught me the rhythms of this new life, how to collect fresh eggs from the chickens, how to bake bread in a wood-fired oven, how to watch the sunset without feeling the weight of past regrets. The neighbors welcomed me as if I'd always belonged. The old man next door dropped off freshly caught trout, and another neighbor brought over warm cornbread with a smile. "Eat up. If you want more, I'll make another batch." Their kindness was simple but healing, more profound than any apology Jason or Jenny could have offered. One evening, as Nancy and I shelled peas in the yard, she turned to me and asked, "Any plans now that you're settled in?" Her question didn't carry any judgment, just curiosity and hope. I looked out at the patch of soil beyond the porch, letting the thought bloom in my mind. First things first, I want to fix this place up, make it more comfortable, and then maybe we start something small. The air's clean, the land's good, we could grow vegetables, make pickles, even host guests on a little farm stay. Nothing big, just enough to keep us busy. Nancy's face lit up. I've been wanting to do that for years. With the two of us, we could really make it work. Watching her excitement, I felt steady for the first time in a long while. I had spent years orbiting around Jason, Jenny, and Tyler's needs, sacrificing my own dreams for their comfort. Now, for the first time, I was creating something for myself, something real, something that mattered. For the first time in years, my life felt steady. The soil beneath my feet was solid, the air crisp and clear. Here, in the countryside, I could plant something and know exactly what I'd reap, none of the tangled chaos I'd left behind. Nancy and I worked side by side in the garden, her laughter a soothing balm for the wounds I didn't even realize I still carried. But just as I began to breathe easily, my peace shattered like glass with a single phone call. The screen lit up with the name I hadn't seen in months. Jason. My chest tightened as I stared at it, willing myself to stay composed. I didn't answer right away. My steps carried me to the far end of the backyard, out of Nancy's line of sight. Only then did I press answer. His voice was strangely forced, too casual. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart," I replied evenly. He filled the air with small talk how the weather was warming up, how Tyler was doing great in school, but the hollowness of his words was deafening. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't acknowledge my absence. It was obvious. He wasn't calling to reconnect. He wanted something. "So everything's okay out there?" he asked, trying to sound conversational. "You doing all right money-wise?" I answered calmly, masking the irritation in my voice. "I'm fine. Not spending much at all." "Oh, that's good," he said, his tone faltering. Then came the real reason for the call, the question I'd known was coming. "Hey, about that apartment, did you end up selling it?" I smiled faintly, my grip tightening on the phone. "Yeah, I sold it." His next question came too quickly, his attempt at nonchalance almost laughable. "How much did you get for it?" I let out a cold chuckle, keeping my tone light. "Not much, just enough for Nancy and me to get by. Fix up the old house. Don't worry, I won't be bothering you for anything." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with his barely concealed disappointment. He tried again, his voice lower now, hesitant. "Mom, things are really tight right now. Tyler's school costs are getting crazy, and..." I cut him off sharply but calmly. "You and Jenny need to learn how to manage your own finances. My money's already taken care of, locked in. I'm not touching it. At my age, I need to make sure I've got something for myself. You understand, right?" His reply was barely audible. "Yeah." And with that, the call ended. I stood there in the yard, staring at the distant hills as the wind carried the scent of soil and pine, but there was no peace in my chest. I knew Jason and Jenny wouldn't give up that easily. Nancy's sharp eyes caught my expression the moment I walked back into the house. I must have looked as if the wind had blown straight through me, leaving my resolve hanging by threads. She set down the basket of freshly washed greens and moved toward me, her arms crossed over her apron, ready for battle. "Jason called, didn't he?" she asked, her tone edged with the kind of protective fury only a sister can muster. "What did he want this time?" I let out a long sigh, sinking into the nearest chair. My voice was quiet but firm as I recounted the conversation, Jason's hollow small talk, his thinly veiled inquiries about money, and his subtle attempt at guilt. Nancy listened intently, her expression darkening with each word. By the time I finished, her lips were pressed into a tight line, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the countertop. "Didn't I say they were after your money?" she snapped, slapping her thigh for emphasis. "Kylie, don't you dare get soft again. They'll rope you back in the second you blink." Her words cut deep, not because they were harsh, but because I knew she was right. For years, I had bent over backward for Jason and his family, giving everything I had to make their lives easier, more comfortable. And how had they repaid me? By casting me aside the moment I became inconvenient. Even now, miles away and months removed, they couldn't let go. To them, I wasn't a mother or a grandmother, I was a resource, a bank account in human form. I nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling in my chest. But as the silence stretched between us, a new sensation began to take hold, not despair or resignation, but something colder, sharper. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. "You're right," I said finally, my voice steady. "They won't stop. In their minds, that apartment money isn't mine. It's theirs just pending inheritance." Nancy tilted her head, studying me carefully. "What are you saying, Kylie?" My gaze hardened, and a small, humorless smile tugged at the corners of my lips. "I'm saying it's time to stop playing their game by their rules. If they want to come after me, fine, let them. But this time, not just walking in blind." Nancy's eyebrows shot up. "And what exactly does that mean?" I leaned forward, my voice lowering as the plan began to take shape in my mind. "Think about it. They think I'm still the same woman who'll sacrifice everything for them without a second thought. But they're wrong. This time, I'll set the terms. If they want my help, they'll have to pay the price literally. No more free rides, no more manipulation." Nancy stared at me for a moment, her surprise giving way to a gleam of approval. She sat down across from me, folding her hands on the table. "All right, Kylie, tell me what you're thinking." We spent the next few hours at that old kitchen table, mapping out every detail like generals planning a war. It wasn't about revenge or spite, though. I'd be lying if I said the thought didn't cross my mind. It was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. We started with the basics, running the numbers the way Jason and Jenny undoubtedly had. "Step 1, housing," I began, tapping my pen against the notepad. "They said there's no room for me in their apartment. Offered me the couch, suggested I pay for my own place. Fine. If they want me to come back, I'll agree, but only if they cover the full cost of a rental, up front. Nancy smirked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. And make sure it's not some dingy little hole in the wall either. You've got standards. I chuckled dryly. Exactly. Let them know it's not negotiable. Step 2. Childcare. If they want me to watch Tyler, there will be condition-set hours, clear boundaries, and compensation for my time. Nancy leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. And what about the robot camp? Or the fun park? You know they'll dangle those in front of Tyler to pull at your heartstrings. My jaw tightened at the memory of Tyler's voice on the phone, so soft and trusting, completely unaware of how his parents were using him as a pawn. They don't get to use Tyler against me anymore, I said firmly. If they bring it up, I'll redirect. It's not his fault, and I won't let them weaponize him, but I also won't let them guilt me into paying for their choices. Nancy nodded, her admiration evident. It's about time you stood up to them. They've taken advantage of you for far too long. As we continued planning, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For the first time in years, I felt in control not of Jason and Jenny's actions, but of my own responses. I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of that apartment with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. I was stronger now, sharper, and I wasn't afraid to set boundaries, even if it meant facing their disapproval. Nancy reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You've got this, Kylie. Don't let them drag you back into their mess. You deserve better. I squeezed her hand, a small smile breaking through the seriousness of the moment. I know, and this time I'm going to make sure they know it too. The call came in the quiet lull of an early evening, just as the last rays of sunlight were stretching over the rolling hills outside. The name on the screen was like a punch to the stomach. Tyler, my grandson. My sweet, innocent boy. The one person who could still make my resolve tremble. The phone felt heavy in my hand, as if it carried the weight of all the years I'd spent raising him, loving him, protecting him. I answered, my voice soft, cautious. Hey, Tyler, I said, trying to steady the tremor in my tone. Grandma, is that you? His voice was small and hesitant, but oh, how it tugged at my heartstrings. It carried memories of bedtime stories and scraped knees, of tiny arms wrapping around my neck, of whispered secrets and giggles. For a moment, I closed my eyes and allowed myself to feel the ache of missing him. It's me, sweetheart. How are you? I asked, forcing warmth into my voice, though a quiet suspicion began to stir in the back of my mind. I miss you, Grandma, he sniffled, and the sound was almost enough to undo me. When are you coming back? I want to play with you again. His words landed like an arrow, piercing through the walls I had carefully built around my heart. I opened my mouth to respond, to say something, anything, but the suspicion began to grow, curling around my thoughts like a vine. This wasn't like Tyler. He was always so lively, so full of stories and questions. This call felt rehearsed. I took a breath, steadying myself. Sweetheart, I said gently, did Mommy or Daddy ask you to call me? The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear his small, uneven breaths, the hesitation hanging heavily in the air. And then, in a whisper so faint, I almost missed it, he said, Yeah, Mommy said if you come back, we can go to the fun park, and you'll help pay for the robot camp. My heart clenched so tightly I thought it might shatter. The suspicion that had been gnawing at the edges of my mind now erupted into full-blown certainty. This wasn't just a sweet call from my grandson. This was a tactic, a strategy, a calculated move designed to pull me back into their world and their financial obligations. It wasn't Tyler's fault. He was just a child, innocent and trusting. But Jason and Jenny had turned him into a pawn, using his love for me as leverage to get what they wanted. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, a mix of fury and heartbreak that left me momentarily speechless. Grandma? Tyler's voice was tentative, worried. I took another breath, forcing the quiver out of my voice. Grandma misses you too, sweetie, I said, my tone as steady as I could make it. When I get a chance, I'll come visit. But you be good, okay? Listen to Mommy and Daddy. Okay, he mumbled. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, Tyler, I said, my throat tightening. And then the call ended. I sat there for a long moment, the phone still clutched in my hand. The room was quiet, save for the faint rustling of leaves outside the window. But inside, a storm was brewing. That call had severed something inside me, the last fragile thread connecting me to the family I had once devoted my life to. Jason and Jenny didn't just want my money, they wanted my compliance, my submission. And now, they were willing to use Tyler to get it. Nancy found me like that, sitting stiffly at the kitchen table, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. I told her everything, every word of the call, every painful realization. As I spoke, her expression darkened, her hands curling into fists at her sides. "That's low," she said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. "Even for them. That's... Kylie, they're crossing every line. They have no shame." I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed on the phone. "They don't see lines, Nancy. To them, this is normal. This is how they've always operated, sweet words and empty promises, all to get what they want." "But Tyler?" Nancy said, her voice breaking slightly. "How could they drag him into this? He's just a little boy. He doesn't understand what they're doing." I looked up at her, my eyes burning with a mix of tears and determination. "That's exactly why it works. Because he doesn't understand. Because he's innocent. But not this time. They're not going to use him to manipulate me." Nancy sat down across from me, her face softening with concern. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, setting the phone down on the table. "I'm going to make it clear that I'm not playing their game anymore. If they want me back, it'll be on my terms. And if they think they can guilt me into paying for anything, they're in for a surprise." Nancy reached across the table, placing a hand on mine. "Good. It's about time you stood up to them, Kylie. You've done more than enough for that family." I nodded, a small but fierce smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "They wanted to play the guilt card, Nancy, but they forgot one thing. I know the deck better than they do." For the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger or sadness, it was resolve. This wasn't just about setting boundaries. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self. They thought they could manipulate me through Tyler's innocent love, but all they had done was steal my resolve. No matter how much love you pour into someone, it doesn't guarantee they'll love you back. I'd learned this the hard way, and now it was my guiding truth. All the years, the effort, the sacrifices had only moved me closer to them. They had never met me halfway. As I prepared to return, I made sure this time was different. This time, I was ready. Before leaving, I stopped by the local bank. From the account Nancy and I had carefully arranged, I withdrew exactly $2,000 in cash. It wasn't for splurging or emergencies, it was armor. I split the cash into neat stacks and tucked them into hidden pockets sewn inside my clothing. The rest of the money remained locked in fixed-term deposits, untouchable without Nancy's knowledge. We'd planned every contingency. Before I left, I stood face to face with her, our conversation heavy with unspoken promises. "I'll text you every night," I said, holding her gaze. "If there's even one day you don't hear from me, don't wait. Call the cops." Nancy didn't flinch. Her face, etched with determination, was a fortress. "You have my word, Kylie. If they lay so much as one finger on you, I swear I'll be their worst nightmare." Her conviction was my anchor. With her at my back, I finally felt steady. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of Jason's door with nothing but a small carry-on suitcase in hand. My pulse was steady, my resolve unshakable. I was no longer the same woman they'd pushed aside. Jenny was the one who opened the door, her over-enthusiastic smile plastered across her face. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes, syrupy sweet to the point of nausea. "Kylie, you're finally here. Come in, come in. Tyler's been asking about you non-stop." Jason stood awkwardly in the background, his grin mechanical, like he'd strapped on a mask just for me. "Hey, Mom, you must be tired from the trip." I nodded without a word and wheeled my suitcase straight into the living room. There it was, the couch, neatly laid out with folded blankets and a pillow, as if they were hosting royalty on a budget. Jenny's considerate tone piped up behind me, her words dripping in manufactured warmth. "The house is really tight right now, so we'll have to ask you to make do just for tonight. Once Tyler's on summer break, you'll probably be tired from watching him all day anyway, so just get some good rest." Every word was like honey laced with thorns. The message was clear. Stay out of the bedroom, don't get comfortable, don't cross the line. I didn't push back. I smiled pleasantly, set my suitcase down and said, "Oh, I'm fine, not a big deal." I saw it then how they both visibly relaxed, the tension in their shoulders easing as if they'd won something. I could almost hear their sigh of relief. And that's when I struck. My back's not what it used to be, I added casually. The couch is a little snug. I also get up 2-3 times a night, lights on, lights off. Wouldn't want to disturb your sleep. I paused, watching their faces tighten like strings pulled too fast on a violin. So, I was thinking, there's a nice little motel just outside the complex. Not too expensive. I could stay there instead. That way, I can take care of Tyler during the day and head back at night. No disruptions. Win-win. My voice remained light, calm, almost disinterested. But every word struck the room like a hammer on stone. Their plan had been simple free, on-call childcare wrapped up in the guise of family obligation. Too bad this nanny had options. The room froze. This wasn't part of their script. Jenny was the first to recover, her voice jumping a pitch higher than usual. A motel? Mom, that's so expensive. Why waste money like that? Sure, our place is small, but the couch works just fine. There's no need to spend on something like that. But it wasn't the money that worried her. It was the control. If I wasn't under their roof, I wasn't at their beck and call. No guilt trips, no ringing dinner bells, no silent expectation that I would pick up the slack. I'd be inconvenient. I smiled, unfazed. Oh, Jenny, I said sweetly before turning to Jason. It's just a motel, no big deal. I think I've earned a little comfort, don't you? I let out a small sigh and shrugged. Only thing is, I didn't bring much cash with meat was all a bit last minute, so the motel... I let the sentence dangle in the air, its implications hanging like a blade. Their faces shifted instantly. They got the message loud and clear. You invited me. You cover the cost. The polite smiles vanished like smoke. Jason started fidgeting, his eyes darting nervously between me and Jenny like a schoolboy caught red-handed. Sweat began to form along his brow. Jenny's jaw tightened, her lips thinning into a sharp, tight line. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating, but she said nothing. The silence was thick, suffocating. Finally, Jason muttered stiffly, "All right." He pulled out his wallet and handed me a few crisp bills, about $500. For a few days. We'll figure things out later. Jenny let out a sharp breath through her nose and stormed off without another word. I took the money with a neutral expression, careful not to let an ounce of satisfaction show. Thanks, I said simply. I'll go settle in. See you tomorrow. I'll be here at 8 sharp to start work. Without giving them another glance, I rolled my suitcase to the door and walked out. The sun was shining, the breeze carrying hints of fresh coffee and soap from the nearby laundromat. As I walked down the block to the modest budget inn, I allowed myself a small smile. The room I booked wasn't fancy, but it was bright, the bed was soft, and most importantly, no one looked at me like I owed them something. That night, I called Nancy. Her excitement practically vibrated through the phone. That's my sis. Show them who's in charge. I smiled as I hung up, sinking into the plush comfort of the bed. The sunlight streaming through the window felt warm and Goldina whirled apart from the cold, hard couch they'd prepared for me. But this was just the beginning. I knew better than to get comfortable. This wasn't over. The real test was still ahead. Tyler's $5,000 robotics camp was the next chapter. Let's see what they really wanted a mother, or just the money. When Jenny opened the door, her smile was brittle, stretched too thin to be sincere. She stepped aside wordlessly, letting me in. Tyler darted around the living room, his laughter a fleeting echo of innocence that didn't belong in the same house as this quiet war we were waging. Jason sat at the kitchen table, shoulders hunched, phone in hand, but his eyes flicked up to meet mine the moment I walked in. I set my bag down beside the door, moving deliberately, letting the weight of the moment settle around us. Jenny cleared her throat, her tone unnaturally bright. Tyler, go grab your backpack. Grandma's here to watch you while we're at work. He hesitated, glancing between us, and for a second, I saw the flicker of confusion in his eyes. But he obeyed, disappearing into the hallway. I turned toward Jenny, my expression calm, my voice steady. We need to talk. Her hand froze on the counter, her knuckles whitening around the edge of a mug. Jason set his phone down slowly, his eyes narrowing. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as the tension thickened. They knew. Even before I spoke, they knew what was coming. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the table toward Jason. His brows furrowed as he picked it up, Jenny moving closer to peer over his shoulder. The words were simple, the clauses clear, but their impact was anything but. It wasn't just a contract, it was a declaration of independence. Jason's voice was sharp, defensive. What is this supposed to mean? I met his gaze unflinchingly. It means I'm done playing games. If you want my help, it'll be on my terms. You asked me to come here, to support you, to take care of Tyler. But I won't do it at the expense of my dignity. This contract outlines exactly what I will and won't do. No more assumptions, no more manipulations, just clarity. Jenny snatched the paper from his hands, her eyes scanning the text quickly. Her face darkened, the practiced smile slipping as her jaw tightened. "You're serious about this?" she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Deadly serious," I replied. Jason leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the table's edge as he stared at me. "Mom, we're family. Do we really need contracts for family?" The corner of my mouth twitched into a faint smile. "Family doesn't mean exploitation, Jason. You're asking for my time, my energy, my life. I'm willing to give it, but not without respect. This isn't about demanding anything from you. It's about making sure I don't lose myself again in the process." Jenny's voice broke through, sharp and cutting. "We've never asked you for anything unreasonable. All we want is a little help. Tyler is your grandson." I turned to her, my gaze steady. "And I love him more than anything. But that love doesn't give you the right to take advantage of me. You've both built a life here, a life you've chosen. It's not my responsibility to fund it, to fix it, or to be your safety net when things get tough. I've done more than my share, Jenny. Now it's time for you to step up." Jenny's eyes burned with a mix of anger and frustration, but she didn't argue. They both knew I was right. But just as I thought the battle was over, the front door creaked open, and Tyler stepped back into the room, his small voice breaking the tension like a glass shattering on stone. "Grandma, are you mad at Mommy and Daddy?" I knelt down, forcing a smile, though my chest felt heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. "No, sweetheart, I'm not mad. Sometimes grown-ups just have to talk about things to make sure everything's okay." I felt I was more than just the sum of the roles I had played. I was a woman with clarity, with purpose, and with the strength to demand the respect I deserved. No matter where life led me, I would always be guided by one unshakable truth. My life, my decisions, and my happiness were my own, and that was more than enough.